Sam wasn't reckless with money. He didn't splurge on designer clothes, didn't gamble away his paycheck, didn't treat himself into a mountain of debt. He was the responsible type, the kind of person who actually opened his banking app more than once a month, who knew roughly what was in his account, who felt a small surge of pride each time he declined an impulse purchase at the checkout line. And yet, every month, the same quiet mystery unfolded. He'd look at his balance near the end of the pay cycle and wonder, in that uncomfortable space between confusion and concern, where did it all go? Not in a dramatic way. There was no single devastating blow, no catastrophic financial mistake he could point to and say, that's what broke me. It was more subtle than that, more insidious, like a room slowly losing warmth through 100 tiny cracks in the walls, each one individually harmless, collectively devastating. The night everything changed. That Tuesday night, Sam sat on the edge of his bed, his orange tabby cat, aptly named Penny, curled up beside him, purring contentedly. The apartment was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic outside. He'd told himself he would only glance at his account. Just a quick check before bed, nothing serious. But the transaction list pulled him in like a slow current, and suddenly he was scrolling, his thumb moving faster, his eyes scanning line after line of charges he'd completely forgotten about. At first, everything looked normal. Groceries from the corner store, his monthly transit pass, the electric bill, coffee from that place near work. Standard stuff. Predictable. The kind of spending that made sense. Then he saw them. The small charges. The ones his brain had learned to skip over. The way you stop noticing a clock ticking in the background. $9.99. $4.99. $12.99. $2.49. Every few days, every couple of weeks, every single month. Quiet, polite, and ruthlessly consistent. Penny stretched beside him, her paw landing on his knee as if to say, "What's wrong?" Sam scratched behind her ears absently, but his attention was locked on the screen. He scrolled back farther. More of them appeared, multiplying like digital weeds. A streaming service he'd signed up for during a particularly boring weekend, cloud storage he'd needed once for a work project, a fitness app with a revolutionary AI coach, design tools he thought would help him start a side hustle, a meditation app he used for exactly 3 days before forgetting it existed, a pro plan he bought just to export one file, a language learning app he'd been passionate about for 2 weeks before life got in the way, a membership with a free trial he'd genuinely meant to cancel. Free trials had turned into paid plans. Paid plans had turned into background noise. Background noise had turned into attacks. Sam didn't feel like he'd actively chosen this situation, because each individual choice had been tiny. A tap, a password, a confirmation screen with terms and conditions he didn't read. Then life had resumed, and the charges had continued, month after month, in perfect automated silence. "You know what, Penny?" Sam said, setting his phone down for a moment. The cat blinked slowly at him, her golden eyes reflecting the dim light from his bedside lamp. "I think I've been bleeding money and didn't even know it." Penny meowed softly, as if in agreement, then went back to grooming her paw. The audit begins. Sam opened his notes app and created a new document. He didn't title it Expenses or Budget. Those words felt too heavy, too loaded with past failures and abandoned New Year's resolutions. Instead, he simply typed Subscriptions. The first few entries were obvious, the ones he could defend if anyone challenged him. His main streaming service, yes, he actually used that one regularly. His phone plan, internet. These made sense. But then came the ones he didn't want to admit existed. The forgotten trials. The accidental double subscriptions when he'd switched between devices. The services that survived purely because they were small enough to ignore and automatic enough to never require attention. As the list grew longer, Sam felt something shift inside him. A realization that wasn't about numbers. It was about psychology. The easiest subscriptions to remove weren't the expensive ones. They were the forgotten trials, the services he didn't even associate with his identity anymore. Those went on the cancel immediately pile without hesitation. But the hardest ones weren't the expensive ones either. They were what he started calling identity subscriptions, the ones that came with a story, a narrative about who he was or who he was trying to become. I'm the kind of person who goes to the gym, even though he'd been 3 times in 6 months. I'm the kind of person who reads, even though his Kindle had gathered digital dust. I'm the kind of person who learns languages, even though he'd stalled at Unit 4. I'm the kind of person who takes care of their mental health, even though the meditation app icon made him feel guilty now, not peaceful. Those subscriptions weren't really about the money. They were promises. Promises to himself about who he would become. And canceling a promise felt like canceling a version of himself, like admitting defeat, like giving up on aspirations that had once felt so real and achievable. Penny jumped onto his desk, nearly knocking over his water glass, and sat directly on his keyboard. It was her way of demanding attention when she felt neglected. "You're right," Sam laughed, moving her gently aside. "I'm overthinking this. It's just money. It's just apps." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't that simple. Money was never just money. It was always tangled up with identity, with values, with the stories we told ourselves about who we were. Building the system. Sam stared at his list and realized something crucial. This wasn't about willpower. It was about system design. Willpower was finite. It fluctuated with mood, energy, stress levels, and how many decisions he'd already made that day. A system, on the other hand, didn't care about his feelings. A system just worked, or it didn't. And if it didn't work, you fixed the system, not yourself. So he built a process, something small enough to actually do, but strong enough to hold up over time. Rule 1. Run the 3-question test. For each subscription on his list, Sam forced himself to answer 3 brutally honest questions. 1. Did I use this in the last 30 days? Not, could I use it, or might I use it someday? Did I actually open it, log in, and get value from it in the past month? 2. Would I buy it again today at full price? If this subscription didn't exist and I had to make a fresh decision right now, knowing exactly what I know about how I actually use it, would I still pull out my credit card? 3. If it vanished tomorrow, what would I actually miss? Not what I'd theoretically miss in some hypothetical world where I'm a different person with different habits. What would create a real gap in my actual daily life? If the answer was no, no, and nothing, it went straight to the cancellation list. No negotiations. No, but maybe I'll start using it again. No mercy. Rule 2. Create a maybe pile with a deadline. Some subscriptions weren't obviously useless, but they also weren't clearly valuable. They lived in that uncomfortable gray zone where Sam could construct arguments for both keeping and canceling them. In the past, he would have kept them just in case. That's what had gotten him into this mess in the first place, the tyranny of just in case. Now, he moved these uncertain subscriptions to a separate maybe list and set a specific deadline in his calendar, March 15th, 2026. That gave him 45 days. If a subscription didn't earn its place by that date, if he hadn't used it enough to justify its cost, it was gone. No exceptions, no endless limbo, no eternal benefit of the doubt. Rule 3. Rotate, don't hoard. Sam realized he didn't actually need 3 streaming services running simultaneously. He didn't need 5 learning platforms active at once. The idea that he might want to watch something on that specific platform at any random moment was just anxiety masquerading as practicality. So he made a new rule, 1 at a time per category. He picked one streaming service for the next month, paused the others. If he wanted variety later, he'd rotate, one season at a time. Watch everything worth watching on platform A, cancel it, activate platform B. Repeat. Same with learning apps, productivity tools, and everything else. Rotation, not accumulation. Rule 4. Separate the autopilot. This was a game changer. Sam created one specific credit card and one account category exclusively for recurring subscriptions. Everything that charged automatically went there. Nothing else was allowed. Now his invisible tax had a single, visible doorway. Instead of subscription charges hiding among grocery purchases and coffee runs, they all lived in one place. If something new appeared on that card, he'd spot it immediately. No more surprises. Rule 5. Turn savings into a transfer. This was the most important rule of all, the one that would actually make the whole system stick. Sam realized that canceling a subscription feels like doing nothing. There's no visible reward. You don't get a medal or a congratulatory email. Money just stops leaving, which is the emotional equivalent of breaking even. No dopamine hit, no sense of accomplishment. He needed to change that. Every time he canceled a subscription, Sam immediately transferred that exact monthly amount from his checking account to a specific savings goal. Not eventually, not when I remember, immediately. $10 from the canceled fitness app went straight to his emergency fund. $15 from the unused cloud storage went toward paying down his credit card. $5 from the meditation app went into his trip to visit mom fund. Money that used to vanish silently now moved somewhere on purpose, somewhere visible, somewhere that mattered to him. He didn't call it saving, he called it closing leaks. The implementation. The next morning, before the guilt or second guessing could settle in, Sam opened his laptop with Penny supervising from her favorite spot on the windowsill. He pulled up his subscription list and started executing. 3 forgotten free trials, canceled in under 10 minutes. The language app he'd kept out of guilt, paused with a note to reassess in 6 weeks. The second streaming service, canceled, with a calendar reminder to reactivate it in 2 months if he actually missed it. A productivity tool he'd signed up for during an ambitious phase, gone. By the end of week 1, he'd closed 7 leaks. Small ones mostly, but they added up to $63 per month. That was $756 per year he'd been giving away to companies for services he wasn't using. "Penny, that's almost enough for a plane ticket," Sam said aloud, watching his cat chase a dust mote through a beam of sunlight. She ignored him, completely absorbed in her hunt. But Sam felt it, that small, growing sense of control. Not the white-knuckled control of deprivation or strict budgeting, but the calm control that comes from systems working as intended. The shift. A month later, Sam looked at his bank statement and saw something different. Fewer tiny charges. The silence felt expensive, in a good way. Like the peaceful quiet of a house after you finally fixed that dripping faucet you'd gotten used to ignoring. But something else had changed too, something harder to quantify. He stopped measuring his financial discipline by how often he checked his balance or how rarely he spent money. Those metrics had always made him feel like he was fighting against himself, like the goal was to want less, need less, be less. Now he measured discipline differently, by how quickly he removed things that no longer served him. It wasn't about perfection. He still signed up for new trials when something genuinely interested him. He still paid for services he valued. But now he had a system for reevaluation, for conscious choice, for making money move on purpose instead of drifting away through neglect. Penny hopped onto his lap one evening as he reviewed his progress. She headbutted his hand until he stopped typing and gave her the attention she deserved. As he scratched under her chin, he thought about how cat ownership had taught him something about financial management. Small, consistent actions matter more than occasional grand gestures. Feeding Penny every single day was more important than buying her an expensive toy once. The daily routine kept her healthy and happy. The toy? She'd probably play with the box it came in instead. Money was the same way. Small leaks, left unattended, could sink a ship, but small patches, applied consistently, could keep it afloat. Your action plan. Here's exactly what to do tonight. No elaborate preparation required, no perfect timing needed. Just 15 minutes and honest eyes. 1. Open your bank or credit card statement right now. Not tomorrow, not after you finish this video. Now. 2. Search for keywords: subscription, recurring, monthly. Or just scan manually for charges that appear in the same amount every month or week. 3. Write every single recurring payment into one master list. Use your phone's Notes app, a spreadsheet, a piece of paper, doesn't matter. Just get them visible. 4. Run the 3-question test on each item. Used in the last 30 days? Would I buy it again at full price today? What would I actually miss if it vanished? 5. Cancel the obvious no items immediately. Don't wait. Don't give yourself time to rationalize. Just cancel. 6. Put uncertain ones on a maybe list with a specific deadline date in your calendar. 7. Pick one category to rotate: streaming, learning, fitness, productivity apps. Keep one active, pause the rest. 8. Create a dedicated place for recurring charges, one specific card or account category where only subscriptions live. 9. Transfer the first month of saved money to a real goal right now: emergency fund, debt payment, vacation savings. Make it real. 10. Set 2 calendar reminders: monthly subscription audit, same date every month; weekly trial check, quick scan for new trials or promotional periods ending. The truth about small charges. Small charges aren't harmless. They're just quiet, and quiet is exactly how they survive. They slip past your defenses not through force, but through irrelevance. Each one too small to trigger your alarm, too automated to require your attention, too occasional to form a pattern you'd consciously notice. But there's another truth Sam discovered. The money saved from closing these leaks doesn't feel like winning at first. It feels like nothing, because nothing dramatic happens. Your account doesn't suddenly explode with wealth. No one congratulates you. You just quietly have more than you would have had. That's the discipline no one talks about: learning to value the absence of loss as much as the presence of gain. Sam's final realization. 3 months into his new system, Sam sat at his kitchen table reviewing his progress. Penny was asleep in a patch of sunlight on the floor, her paws twitching as she dreamed whatever dreams cats dream. He'd recovered $127 per month by closing the leaks. That was $1,524 per year. Not life-changing money, but not nothing either. More importantly, it was money he'd been earning all along. He'd just been giving it away by default. The system had held. The reminders kept him accountable. The rotation strategy worked. He didn't feel deprived. He felt intentional. But the biggest change wasn't in his bank account. It was in his relationship with money itself. He used to think of financial responsibility as a form of constant vigilance, like being a security guard who could never rest, always watching for threats, always suspicious of his own impulses. Now he understood. It wasn't about vigilance. It was about architecture. Build good systems, and the systems do the watching for you. Build good defaults, and you don't need willpower. You just need to not actively sabotage yourself. Penny woke up, stretched luxuriously, and padded over to her food bowl. She sat beside it and stared at Sam with that special cat intensity that communicates both patience and absolute certainty that food will appear. Sam smiled and got up to feed her. As he poured her kibble, he thought about how this simple daily ritual, feeding his cat, was actually a perfect financial metaphor. Consistency beats intensity. Small actions, repeated, compound into something significant. And sometimes the most important financial decision isn't what you do, it's what you stop doing. He'd spent years trying to get better with money by adding things: budgeting apps, complicated spreadsheets, motivational content, accountability partners, all additions, all requiring more effort, more energy, more mental bandwidth. But the real breakthrough had come from subtraction, from removing friction, from eliminating the small, silent drains that had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. The invisible becomes visible. That evening, Sam updated his tracking spreadsheet one final time before closing his laptop. The numbers told a simple story. 7 subscriptions canceled in month 1, 4 more in month 2, 2 maybe subscriptions that failed the 45-day test in month 3. Total monthly recovery, $127. Total annual recovery, $1,524. But beneath those numbers was a different story, one that couldn't be captured in a spreadsheet. A story about awareness, about intention, about the difference between spending by choice and spending by default. Sam had learned to see the invisible tax, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. He noticed it everywhere now. Friends who complained about money stress while paying for 6 streaming services they barely used. Colleagues who skipped lunch to save money, but never questioned the $15.99 monthly charge for an app they'd opened twice. Family members who agonized over buying a $30 book, but didn't bat an eye at 3 years of automatic renewals for a service they'd forgotten they had. The invisible tax wasn't unique to him. It was everywhere, quietly draining millions of accounts, one small charge at a time. But Sam also learned something else. You can't save someone who doesn't see the problem. You can't cancel subscriptions for people who aren't ready to admit they're paying for promises instead of value. All he could do was share what he'd learned, tell his story, show his system, and hope that someone else, scrolling through their transaction history late at night, would have the same realization he'd had. The new normal. 6 months later, Sam's system had become automatic. Not in the dangerous way subscriptions are automatic, silently draining without awareness, but in the healthy way good habits become automatic, so integrated into his routine that they require almost no conscious effort. The first of every month, his phone reminded him, monthly subscription audit. He'd spend 15 minutes reviewing his dedicated subscription card, checking for any new charges, evaluating whether last month's services had earned their keep. Once a week, another reminder, trial check. A quick 30-second scan to make sure no free trials were about to convert to paid subscriptions without his explicit approval. And every time he canceled something, which happened less frequently now because he'd become much more selective about what he signed up for in the first place, he immediately transferred that amount to one of his savings goals. The emergency fund that had been stuck at $400 for 2 years, now at $1,850. The credit card that had been carrying a balance, paid off. The Visit Mom fund, fully funded with a plane ticket already booked. Penny had even benefited. Sam had redirected $12 per month from a canceled productivity app into a penny fund, savings for vet bills, high-quality food, and the occasional fancy toy that she would inevitably ignore in favor of the box it came in. The lesson. One evening, Sam's younger brother called, asking for financial advice. "I don't get it," his brother said, frustration evident in his voice. "I make decent money, I don't spend on crazy stuff, but I'm always broke. What am I doing wrong?" Sam thought back to that Tuesday night, 6 months ago, sitting on his bed with Penny, scrolling through his transaction history with growing horror. "Can I ask you something?" Sam said. "How many subscriptions do you have?" "I don't know. A few? Normal stuff. Why?" "Do me a favor. Right now, open your banking app. Search for the word subscription Or just look for charges that repeat every month. Then count them. Actually count them. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then typing. Then more silence. Holy shit, his brother finally said. There's more than I thought. How many? 14. No, wait, 16. And I only use maybe 5 of them regularly? Sam smiled. He remembered that exact feeling, the shock of discovery, the disbelief that so much had been happening right under his nose. Okay, here's what you're going to do, Sam said, and he walked his brother through the system. The 3-question test, the maybe pile, the rotation strategy, the dedicated card, the immediate transfer. Not because Sam had become some kind of financial guru, not because he'd unlocked some secret that personal finance experts didn't want you to know, but because he'd learned something simple and true. The most expensive purchases are the ones you forget you're making. Penny's wisdom. That night, as Sam settled into bed, Penny claimed her usual spot on his chest, purring loudly enough to rival a small engine. He scratched behind her ears and thought about everything that had changed in 6 months. The money was nice. The savings felt good. The paid-off credit card was a genuine relief. But the real transformation was psychological. He no longer felt like money was this mysterious force that flowed in and then vanished through some process beyond his control. He understood where it went. He made conscious choices about where he wanted it to go. And when he discovered it going somewhere he didn't intend, he had a system to redirect it. Financial peace, he realized, wasn't about having a lot of money. It was about knowing where your money was and feeling okay about it being there. Penny kneaded her paws into his chest, her claws just sharp enough to be noticeable through his shirt. She didn't worry about invisible taxes or forgotten subscriptions. She didn't stress about where her next meal was coming from, or whether she was making optimal use of her resources. She just lived in the present, trusted that her needs would be met, and spent her energy on things that actually mattered to her. Sunbeams, cardboard boxes, and demanding attention at precisely the moment Sam was trying to do something important. Maybe there was wisdom in that simplicity. Not the kind of wisdom that meant ignoring your finances. That's how he'd ended up with 16 subscriptions in the first place. But the kind of wisdom that meant once you've built good systems, you can stop obsessing and start living. The end. And the beginning. This isn't a story about becoming rich. It's not about extreme frugality or denying yourself anything enjoyable. It's not about judging anyone who chooses to pay for services that bring them genuine value. This is a story about awareness, about intentionality, about the difference between choosing how you spend your money and letting algorithms, auto-renewals, and forgotten decisions choose for you. Sam didn't become a different person. He didn't develop superhuman discipline or some radical new philosophy about money. He just learned to see what was already happening. And once he saw it, he built a simple system to align his actual spending with his actual values. The invisible tax became visible. The leaks got plugged. The money started flowing where he wanted it to flow. And that made all the difference. Your turn. Somewhere right now, there's someone scrolling through their transaction history, feeling that same uncomfortable mixture of confusion and concern that Sam felt 6 months ago. Maybe that someone is you. If it is, you already know what to do. You don't need more information. You don't need a more complicated system. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment, or the first of the month, or the beginning of a new year. You just need to open your banking app, look at what's really happening, and ask yourself 3 simple questions. Did I use this in the last 30 days? Would I buy it again today at full price? If it vanished tomorrow, what would I actually miss? The answers will tell you everything you need to know. The invisible tax is real. It's been there all along, quiet and patient and ruthlessly consistent. But now you can see it. And once you see it, everything changes. Do the audit, close the leaks, take control. Like, subscribe. Welcome to Cashflow Stories. See you next episode.